Okay, so we're going to continue with the virtualization. We talked about that already. We have created a machine as well, in which I created a machine as well, and whoever was wanted to follow would have created the machine. And if I go to what we did last time we were connected, so we had created a machine, and I asked for a screenshot. Excuse me. Make sure until VT. Yeah. So I'm gonna start that machine that was already created at that time. So if I go through the steps there, let me just show you the machine as well in my VMware workstation. So I'll just minimize and go to the VMware workstation. We actually installed Windows Server 2019, and then we had installed Hyper-V as well. So obviously this would be all your screenshots on my screen, but with your name. Also, I'll be creating accounts today on or I'll let you know how to access the AWS. So some of the introduction to the interface as well of AWS we're gonna go over, but first we'll finish this and then go ahead. So we created a machine that is so we have just one machine here, and that has an OS, and on top of that OS we have hypervisor, and that hypervisor is hypervisor obviously 2. Why? Because it's on top of an operating system. Hypervisor 1 is excuse me, Hypervisor 1 is directly installed on a bare metal machine, and Hypervisor 2 is installed on top of an operating system. It's used for training purpose, and on top of Hypervisor 2 we're going to be creating then the virtual machine, and that virtual machine I'll just try to put some kind of OS inside that virtual machine as well, and we're going to explore the virtual machine features and virtual network features, and that's the same thing pretty much you're gonna see in the cloud as well, because it's somebody else's hardware. On top of that is the virtual environment. So what you see on premises virtual environment is what you will be seeing in the cloud virtual environment as well, and also virtual storage. So in AWS Cloud, in Azure Cloud, in Google Cloud, and this on-premises virtual environment, pretty much virtual storage concepts, virtual network concepts, virtual machine concepts are same. But obviously here it's our hardware on top of which we're creating a virtual machine, and in the cloud it's somebody else's or their hardware on top of which we're creating our virtual machines, virtual storage, and virtual networks there. So when we are creating on somebody else's hardware, so obviously the features are different, and on the scale they have created the amount of data centers, the state-of-the-art hardware and networking configurations they have placed there. So that's why features, and cloud is made for obviously corporates, mainly, but obviously even very small company can also start up in cloud. Just start their virtual machines, have one storage. I have my private company, right? I had my private company, actually have, and whenever I need it, I just went for $8 package for Office 365, where I needed an email, I needed and from GoDaddy.com, $20 website hosting, and do like $10 for 1 year a domain. So full company can be created. You need Office 365 or Google Cloud or G Suite just to set up a small company, and whatever number of employees you have, you can just create their account, $7 per month. So any small company could be created. And if you need virtual machines on small scale, so you can go to Google Cloud, Azure Cloud, AWS Cloud, if it's a small company, and just start few virtual machines there. Or you can go for just if the applications need not be installed on top of a virtual machine, but on top of on a SaaS-based model, software as a service. So you can do that too. So any small scale company with 2 to 5 or 10, 20 employees can also start with totally cloud presence. You want to start a virtual machine for your applications. You have your applications as SaaS-based, where you just log in and pay per month, and that's it. So it has become so easy to have application and infrastructure to start a company because of the cloud offerings. But when we are going for on-premises, obviously it's not that easy. It depends on how technical you are and how much you want to spend on the property, and so it's a bit more expensive to have your own on-premises data center and then start your small company, and then have technical support and then everything. So it's a bit more expensive here on premises, and it's a bit more cheaper to start a company online. So I'll just go ahead, and what we were planning to do is we already have a Hyper-V installed here. So Microsoft Hyper-V is the hypervisor we have, Microsoft Hyper-V, and on top of that is that virtual machine that we need to create. And when we are creating the virtual machine, we will also try to understand the configurations there. We also need to know how this whole virtualization environment came into being. When the hypervisor is deployed, and we were talking about, in fact, the network card. So I'll just build that. Obviously, in a hypervisor, when you're having virtual machines, and those virtual machines will have their own data there, right? So it will be application and OS inside that virtual machine as well. Application, OS inside this virtual machine. Now, you won't be having just one virtual machine. Obviously, you will have multiple virtual machines. So if there are multiple virtual machines, they need networking as well. So in that case, you need a virtual switch that needs to connect these machines to each other and to the outside world as well, internet. So application, OS, and application OS, right? So these need to also connect to outside world, and also you have then the network card here. This is the network card here, while you have smaller NICs, virtual NICs here, and that's a physical NIC. So if I go for this, that's virtual NIC, right? So those are virtual network cards, and we have here then a PHY-NIC or physical network card. And obviously we have a disk as well, that is physical disk on top of which the OS is installed, and then on top of that is hypervisor installed in a training environment. But in professional environment, you will have this hardware as Dell hardware or HP hardware and or IBM hardware, and directly on top of that will be the hypervisor directly installed. And hypervisor does not take much space for its own working, so we talked about that before as well. So I'll just put that as a PHY disk, physical disk. So what's the plan here? In fact, I was talking about virtual switch here. So when we last time deployed this hypervisor, so there was a virtual switch that was also needed. So this virtual switch is already installed. In fact, inside the virtual switch, and we're talking about Microsoft's hypervisor, which is Hyper-V, and it creates an external network, right? It calls it external network. We can also call it external switch, and it's not external. So when we say external network, it's just a switch. And what is its job? What is its main? Well, what the physical switch does, the virtual switch also do. So the virtual machine, when they get created, they ask that, hey, there's a network card with the virtual machine. Which virtual switch you want to connect this network card to? So when we create a virtual machine, we will be asked about, there is a external network named switch there. So you want to connect your virtual machine's network card to this. Obviously, you have to connect to some network cards and some virtual switch. So that is the virtual switch that is created there. So all virtual machines will be connected to this virtual switch in a Microsoft Hyper-V hypervisor, whether it is hypervisor 1 or hypervisor 2. In our case, it's 2. And this virtual switch in turn is connected to our physical network card, and obviously the physical network card is connected to a physical switch that would be outside, right? Physical switch that would be connected to a router as well, right? So that's a virtual switch inside hypervisor. Virtual machines are connected there, and then there are more types of switches as well. And when do we use that? Why do we use that? We're going to talk about that too in this diagram. We're going to keep on extending this. Okay, so this is you get a virtual standard switch. Actually, this is a terminology used for VMware hypervisor, ESXi. But this is the external switch that is called, and there are internal switch, there is private switch as well, and when they are used, we're going to talk about that when we come to the switches. But right now, this is how it is. We haven't created the virtual machines yet, but what we have created is we installed the Windows Server 2019. Then on top of that, we installed a Hyper-V hypervisor, and automatically what got installed with the Hyper-V hypervisor is a virtual switch, and that virtual switch is connected to in our case it's a virtual NIC, because we've created this virtual machine inside a VMware workstation. Otherwise, in production environments, this virtual switch will be connected to a physical network card. So in our case, it's a virtual network card itself as well. So we haven't created virtual machines, but other than that, everything else is in place. So let's check it out. If I go to my machine here that we created in last class, I did not actually give the name or renamed it. In fact, that's gonna be a good idea. So I'm just gonna put that. I'm gonna go to local server where already Hyper-V as a role is installed. So I'll just go to the local server in server manager. Why? To rename it. So I'm just gonna quickly do the rename, and I'll click change, and so your first name dash Hyper-V. So I just wanted the name back there, so the picture, the screenshot that you will take would show that. Okay, whose machine is this? Oh, okay, I'm too late. Should have gone for AMER. Now all screenshots will be easy for Amir. AMER. Okay, so I'm just restarting after renaming it. So after that, we're gonna go for the virtual machine creation and what are the features involved there. So if I go back to the OneNote here, so Hyper-V hypervisor, 80% of the market shares with VMware actually. Plan is, what is our plan? So install VMware tools once the virtual machine is installed. I think we did that. I'm going to double check this. Rename, that's what I did just now. Check the time zone, we'll check that. Power settings, this is just to not have the virtual machine idle for 15 minutes, then it locks us out. Suppose we're talking or doing something else and not working on the virtual machine, so in 15 minutes it locks and it's it's like screensaver, right? So install VMware tools, I need to check that actually, because if we need to copy something or we just need to, I think we may have done it. It just makes the machine user friendly. Yeah, if the full screen is there showing, I'll just right click on the machine. If it says reinstall, this means that I have already installed it, so we're good. I'll just press this Ctrl+Alt+Delete to get the prompt for the credentials and log in. So install your tools, it is done. Rename, it is done. And I'll just go for, so check the time zone. I'll just quickly do that, and then we go ahead and start the features. So the features of virtual machines that we will discuss here are, you're going to see that many of the features are obviously the same, but many new features will be there in the cloud. When you're in the cloud, you create a virtual machine, then the features will be much more than this. So normally you need to go for high availability in the cloud, and disaster recovery and replication. So for then the features really go extensive, and obviously then they increase the rate per minute as well. Oh, sorry, per hour rate for that. Normally they are going down towards per second charging as well, but per second charging is for containers. For virtual machine in cloud, it's per hour. Okay, so here, once it is renamed and the time zone is Eastern US and 6:21, yeah, so the time is okay as well. I'll just go back to the rest of the configurations, change power settings. I'll check it out as well. And if I go down to this Windows icon, and then I'll go up to power options here, and so when plugged in, turn off after 10 minutes. So my machine is plugged in, so I'm just gonna change that to never, right? So idle time, it should not lock us, and we have to put the passwords, credentials again and again. I'm just gonna click never and close here. So if I alt tab and go back to this, so that's done. Install hypervisor, this we did already. Restart, we did. So let's go ahead and now we're going to so it talks about the virtual switch, virtual machine, storage, so we can go any way there. So there's first of all virtual switch, and in virtual switch normally excuse me, did I mention that already? Yeah, so it's virtual switch. Okay, I'll just put up there that mentioned below on this page. I'm gonna go down here to virtual switch. Where are those in Hyper-V? What is the purpose of those? Purpose, we already know that. the virtual machines need to communicate with each other and to the outside world, so the virtual switches have to be there. And virtual switches are there in cloud. It is not exactly like virtual switches, but networking components are there. In the background, obviously, they do work like virtual switches, but once we know here how virtual switches are working, then when we get to compare the networking components in cloud, then you would be able to then differentiate that how in on-premises virtualization the networking is configured, and then in cloud how the networking is really configured. So the virtual switches in Hyper-V, external switch, this is the first one, and it connects VMs to each other and to the outside world as well. So hence that diagram that we created, that the virtual switch actually has a connection with a physical network card. If this network card, if there are two network cards, then you can make a NIC team of that, and this virtual switch will connect to the NIC team virtual network card, which will be controlling the two physical network cards. So external switch connects to overnet. These switches are connected to a physical NIC, right? Physical network card, and okay, so that would be external switch, and I'll just, so these we can create more virtual switches. We can create multiple external switches to regulate the traffic, the network traffic on one hypervisor, right? So, well, obviously, when we create multiple network external switches, then we can actually make one virtual machine talk to one external switch, and the other virtual machine can talk to another external switch. I'm going to create that diagram and explain that. Also, one external switch can connect to one NIC, right? So one NIC cannot take two external switches. That means, so one external switch, one NIC, right? So if you are creating another external switch, so if I go back to the diagram here, there's one NIC here, and you have one external switch. Then the boss says, suppose that, hey, can you create one more external switch? I'm going to show you the purpose as well. So you create another external switch, but that external switch cannot be connected to the same network card to which the first external switch is connected. It has to be connected to another network card. So another network card has to be added for this external switch. Okay, could admit I disconnected. Oh, okay. I didn't get it. Sorry. You okay? Right. Okay, so hopefully you're okay, but you can elaborate as well. Let's go ahead, and yeah, we were talking about that external switches. Oh, okay. So external switch can connect with one network card. If one network card is already connected to one external switch, the second external switch cannot connect to the same network card. You have to add another network card. Why would you want to even add another switch here? Now that's another thing that we can do here, and that is, suppose you have a hypervisor, and that hypervisor, and on top of that you have virtual machines, right? So there is that disk. There are actually several NICs here, several network cards. So you have decided to create 2 external switches. Now the scenario, I'll explain that scenario as well. 2 external switches, right? Why 2? Because suppose there is a file server for Toronto users, and a file server for New York users. So now traffic for these 2 servers should be traveling on separate network equipment, that is virtual or physical, but they have to be separate. They cannot be traveling on the same, maybe for security reasons, but if that's a requirement that a file server for Toronto, the users of that file server should only be connected from a separate network path on that file server. So what I'm trying to say here, let me just create that and then you will understand. Suppose that's a file server for Toronto, and this is a file server for New York, and that file server here, Tor, and then there is a file server New York, NY, and the traffic for that has to be separate, totally separate. Although they are living inside one hypervisor, one machine, their traffic must stay separate. So if we give those that terminology here as well, so there's a Tor external switch, and there is a NY external switch, right? And if we go for the same terminology here, that it's going to be Tor NIC and NY NIC. And so it's Toronto. Oh, okay. I wanted not these lines to be crossed, but I think they will. So this file server is only connected to external switch, and then from there it connects to the Tor NIC, and this file server only connects to the New York external switch, and that connects to this NIC here. And outside, when the traffic leaves this hypervisor, this New York NIC can actually connect to a physical switch that is connected to a gateway. So that's a physical switch within the branch, PHY switch, and that switch is actually connected to ISP, so through the router. So router and then ISP, right? So that's going to be the gateway, and that could be, and later it's just going to the ISP that is connecting this to New York traffic, right? So, and then you have another link, either it could be same ISP or it could be another one, but you have kept this. So normally this is done with the managed services companies. There are many companies here in GTA across the planet as well that are called MSPs, or managed services companies, right? Oh, okay. It becomes C actually, MSC. But those managed service providers, MSPs. So managed service providers, what do? They have actually virtual machines for all the different clients. Suppose they have companies with just 20 employees, and then they have companies with 1,000, 5,000, 20,000 employees. So in their own data center, one data center, they have 20 virtual machines of one company, 50 virtual machines of another company, 80 virtual machines of another company. So but they have the same hardware, and they put certain virtual machines of one company in the same hardware, and certain virtual machines of another company in the same hardware. So they would want to then keep the traffic flow totally separate as well. So in that case, normally they can use the networking, virtual networking, in a way that, and you're going to see that in cloud, that when you create in the cloud LAN, you can actually create a LAN in cloud, local area network, right? So, or the LAN or the network that has just private IPs in the cloud, you can do that. And there also you can create subnets, and you can control your traffic flow there. So how it is controlled here, you can have in physical environment, you have physical switch, you can do VLANs on the switch as well to separate the traffic, so here, but in the virtual environment, yes, here also you can use VLANs if you want, but the main thing here to understand is that you can keep a full traffic flow separate, while the two virtual machines or 20 virtual machines are inside one hypervisor. They cannot share files with each other, because we have kept the traffic flow totally separate with each other from each other. So what we have put there, suppose there's a physical switch here as well, there's a router here as well, and then there is that ISP here as well, right? So this is how you can just keep within one network. Physical network, you keep the traffic separate, and then virtual environment, you can keep the traffic separate as well. So can we do that hypervisor, this diagram in our actual hypervisor? Yes, we can. That's what I intend to show, there. And so when we talk about the switches, that one external switch can connect to one NIC, in case we need another external switch, right, then we need another physical NIC as well. Okay, so as far as external switch is concerned, this is how it is, and I'm going to go inside the virtual machine where it is, the external switch, and how does it look like. So I'm on so that's hypervisor 2, obviously, which means that it is for trading environments. If it was hypervisor 1, then there would not have been an operating system here. So if we go for, if anyone needs VMware, how VMware is implemented with the hypervisor 1, then let me know. I'll just share the other class videos with you where I teach for the VCP certification, right? But VCP, it's very important for you for your job environment if you want to apply for other than the cloud. So I'm going to go for Hyper-V here, I can go either from here, or I can go to Tools, and then I can go down to Hyper-V Manager. I'm going to click that Hyper-V Manager here, and once Hyper-V Manager opens, then you can see this, it's the server name here. Yeah, I don't see a rename here. Okay, Hyper-V settings, if I check that, can I still and name that? Nope. Okay. It just grabs the name of the server. So we were talking about switches, right? Once the Hyper-V gets it opens up, then you can right click here, and there's a virtual switch manager here. So if we go inside the virtual switch manager, so this is the virtual switch manager, and inside the virtual switch manager, it takes us, first of all, on the top it says here virtual switches, right? So that's how it is, right? Virtual switches. Second thing is, it was on new virtual switch, where 3 types of switches can be created, right? And then there is one, under that new virtual switch is actually one switch that is already created, right? So it's Intel, it just grabs the name of the network card, right? That virtual switch, it grabs the name of the network card. If you go down to that external switch here, so it shows here external network, and this is the network, physical network card that it is connected to. There's only one physical network card here, and allow management operating system to share the network adapter. So yes, the network adapter is shared, and that's why it can be shared with all the virtual machines that can be created here inside. And second thing is there's enable single root IO virtualization, which is just a bit more, it provides just a bit more bandwidth there. Also, you can create here internal network card, internal network and private network. This is not card, this is external network, which I refer to as external switch, right? It's actually a virtual switch. Then internal network is just a internal switch, and private network is private switch. But what are these used for? We're going to talk about that too. And then in external network, not only that it connects the virtual machines to outside world, but you can just create VLAN here as well. So suppose you create one external virtual switch with VLAN 2. Then you go to new virtual switch and go to external and then create virtual switch here, and you create a second virtual switch under this, and it's also external network or external virtual switch. And if you put there VLAN 3, so virtual machines connected to VLAN 2 based external switch cannot communicate with virtual machines that are connected to VLAN 3 based external switch. So that's external network, and it's already created when we were installing this Hyper-V here and in previous class. So if I just expand that, so there are extensions there as well, and it just says Microsoft Windows filtering platform, which is WFP, Windows filtering platform, vSwitch extension, lightweight filter for Hyper-V virtual switch filtering if it wants to do filtering of the packets, or normally for packets for diagnostics purpose. And then there is Microsoft NDIS capture, so if you want to capture the packets as well. So there are some monitoring related extensions that are available, or it supports these features there. The selected extension is not operating correctly. Check the event logs for further information. If this is a non-Microsoft extension, contact the vendor for further troubleshooting steps. So some of the extensions are coming from third party as well. Actually, it says Microsoft, so it needs to be properly configured. But what we need to understand here is that it's for monitoring of all the traffic here as well. So external switch is created here. Other than that, there's internal switch and private switch, which are called internal network and private network. If we go back here to this, so we're going to go to that other scenario where we have two external switches. We're going to go back to this one a bit later. First, we are just talking about the external switch. Then we can create internal switch as well. So suppose you want to, so what scenario it is used, we're going to talk about that. And we can also create private switch in a hypervisor. So virtual switch internal network. It is called internal network, but it's obviously a virtual switch. And then there is virtual switch private network. Now, why would you want to use that internal switch? So let's get to this as well. First, we can just talk about it, then I'm going to create that too. So we talked about external switch, then there is internal switch here, and that is connects VMs to each other and to the host only, right? So it connects to the host on top of which, who's the host? Host is that operating system, Windows Server 2019, on top of which the Hyper-V is installed, and on top of that are going to be virtual machines deployed. So the internal switch connects VMs to each other and to the host. This switch does not get connected to a physical NIC. That's one difference. And internal switch, it can be used for private, you can say test environment where we need to copy paste software back and forth to from the virtual machine and machines and hosts and host on top of it the virtual machines live. So if you want to copy paste the software back and forth, then you can just do that. So internal switch is used for just this purpose. Then what is a private switch used for? Well, since we're talking about internal switch and it's could be a good comparison, normally you would also know how the environments in the network environments in companies are termed as or called. So external switch, it can be / is used in production environments, right? Where your production machines are, the production means the actual machines to which your clients are connecting, and then your company is earning millions of dollars from that application that is deployed on the production virtual machines, right? So production just means that you can't afford to have any mishap there happening. This can be used in production environments, right? Internal switch, that could be, sometimes test environments also want to connect to internet, so obviously you can still use the external switch with test environments as well. Internal switch, when we talk about that, it can be used for test environments where we need to copy paste software back and forth to from the virtual machines and host. But the main thing is that internal switch is not connected to a physical switch. So instead of going ahead with private switch, let me just first create that diagram. Now suppose there are other network cards of virtual machines here, and you want to connect the virtual machines to an internal switch. So two virtual machines can connect to internal switch. Now you can see that there is no line going from internal switch to any physical NIC. So this means that if the virtual machines are connected to internal switch, they cannot send data outside of this hypervisor. They can exchange data between them, and they can exchange data, copy data from the host as well. Host is on top of which the virtual machines are running. That is the OS, this OS. So internal switch, again, virtual machines data is not going outside of this hypervisor. But then what is the private network? So as we said, that internal switch is mainly then useful for copy pasting from host any software to virtual machine, and any software from virtual machine to host. But then comes the private switch, connects VMs only to each other. That's it. Not to the host and not to the internet as well. This switch also is not connected to a physical link. So this means that we can use this switch in dev environment, right? What is dev? You must have heard in production UAT, which is normally test environment, and then dev. This is also a test environment, but anything goes here. Like dev environment, development environment, and what happens here is that you can just do whatever you want, right? Like there's a new software that company is about to buy, and you want proof of concept, POC. So the vendors come and install their software in your dev environment. Go ahead and play with it. But then you install it, you check all the features, you check the results, and you shut it down, you restart it, you uninstall some of the features. So whatever you want to do with that to gain confidence on that application and test the results of those applications. So test all the features of that. Now private switch, first of all, the virtual machines are only talking to each other. They're not even talking to the host and not to the internet. So outside environment will not be. Outside means, so if I go back here, And there are two virtual machines with those NICs there. Suppose this and another NIC here, and so that's the private switch, and they are connected to the private switch, so they can only talk to each other. That's it. So then obviously it's a bit easier to run any kind of testing there in such a way that even if some kind of if it breaks, if something is not working, its effects will not go and disturb the virtual machines in the internal network and in the external network. Whichever virtual machines are connected to the external network, whichever virtual machines are connected to the internal network, those will not be affected, and the host itself will not be affected with whatever testing, aggressive testing you're doing on those virtual machines, right? So obviously it's not the same virtual machines that you're connecting to production. You will be connecting to private as well. Whatever virtual machines you connect to the private, they will only be like connected to private, but not to any other. Although technically you want to connect one set of network cards or one network card of each machine to external network, while another network card on each machine to private network. Yes, you can do that too, and there are many reasons for that. Why would you want to do that? Like just sharing data with each other while you're not actually doing any testing that could result in breaking, just sharing data between each other. So you can do that, but the main thing is if the virtual machines are only connected to private network or private virtual switch, then this means that you've put it on dev environment. You don't want anything that happens inside those virtual machines to affect the OS on top of which they are living, and to the other virtual machines that are connected to the other types of switches there. So private switch, and it's also, you can see there's no line going to the network card. So the private switch and internal switch, the only difference is the internal switch you can copy paste material from OS, the host itself, to the virtual machine back and forth, while virtual switches, private network, you would not be able to even communicate from within the virtual machine to the host, or you won't be able to copy anything back and forth. So it will be perfect for a dev environment where anything goes. You install, reinstall software, you break something, and just to test it, you want to do all the crash testing, you can do that. So it's very important to then have a knowledge of these three types of switches. That's the same. This is Microsoft hypervisor. There is a VMware hypervisor called ESXi that also has a virtual standard switch, which has a lot more features than these switches. Hence, you will see in companies normally VMware environment, but this would be the second most used among the companies. And these environments would be connected to cloud as well in many companies, right? So any big companies, you would have on-premises machines, so you would see VMware ESXi or Hyper-V. And if they're connected like this, so those virtual machines, they would expect you to migrate as well, to be able to migrate to cloud as well. If you see a hybrid environment, on-premises plus cloud. So now we talked about all the switches here. If I go back to this, so I'm gonna go for internal switch now. So we already have an external switch created automatically, but I'll be creating a separate second external switch as well. But internal switch and private switch are not yet created. They are options there. So I'm going to go for internal switch as well. Okay, so the first screenshot actually will be one external switch created. So the first screenshot, one external switch created. Take a screenshot here. Take a screenshot here. One external switch created. So I'm going to take a screenshot here now and sample screenshot. When you're doing a screenshot, just remember to have your name in Notepad showing somewhere. So I'll just go ahead and take that sample screenshot. You can take this my screen's screenshot, and one external switch created. So this is the external switch. Hopefully you've taken the screenshot. I'll just go and put it on OneNote here. Screenshot one external switch created, and I'll just put it there as well, so those who can. So COMP3108 screenshot one external switch created. Okay, so the screenshot you were supposed to take is this screen. I hope that everyone has taken the screenshot. And let's go ahead. So one external switch created is the title of this screenshot. Let's go ahead. So I'm going to go for this new virtual switch, right? Because I can create more switches there as well, even multiple external, multiple internal, multiple private as well. So I'm on new virtual network switch, and I'm going to go for internal because external is already there, and later we're going to create a second external as well for that scenario. But I'm going for internal network or internal switch. So once we select that, creates a virtual switch that can be used only by virtual machines that run on this physical computer and between the virtual machines and the physical computer, which is the host. An internal switch, a virtual switch, does not provide connectivity to a physical network. So no outside connectivity, or outside of the hypervisor, no connectivity. So I selected the internal, and I'm going to click the create virtual switch. So first of all, under that first external switch is the internal switch created, and I can just name it AMER space internal, and the rest is already written there. So I'll just copy paste and put it in notes as well. Now you can see that once it is created, so the internal network is selected, and you can see there's no network card connected to it because network card can only be connected to the external network, which is this option. So internal network, there is no option to connect a network card. And the only other thing is that yes, you can still configure VLAN in internal network or internal switch as well. So once the internal virtual switch is created, I'm going to click apply and OK. O and K. Well, if I click OK, it's going to just close the screen. So I'm just going to right click here again and go to virtual switch manager, and the two switches are created. I'm going to go for, before going there, I'll just rename this so we could see it. I understand easily which one is the above one. So virtual switch at the end is still written, but it has grabbed the name and model of a network card. So we're going to change that to your first name external. So now the naming would be understandable. One more thing, I'm going to add here 1, so we could create a second external switch as well later. So your first name external virtual switch 1, and Control A, Control C, and in the notes Control V. So external switch 1 already created by default, then internal we created ourselves. Later on when we create virtual machines, I'm going to show you how to use that and how to change the virtual machine's network card from one switch to another. But let's go for the third one as well. I'm just going to go to the top here, new virtual network switch. I'm going to go for private, and there I'll click the create virtual switch again, and you know the drill then, that your first name private virtual switch, Control A, Control C, and Control V. Okay, let's check. Yeah, you have to go down and then apply. There's no apply button. Oh, yeah, it happens. You have to make your screen bigger or drag it up a little, and you will see the apply button at the bottom. Make the screen bigger or right. So this is the apply button I can see, but yes, sometimes it happens. If I put it down, so see this? Now I put it down, now I cannot see that too. So I dragged it up like this. But if you can't drag it up, so you need to go for full screen and then do that, and you will be able to see that easily when you do full screen. Okay. So yeah, so under the remove is the apply, but you have to just drag it up and down. Okay. Now this your first name private virtual switch, and here it's connected to private switch, so you can see that no network card is connected. Not only that, but you cannot put the VLAN ID here as well. So it's really basic connectivity between only whatever number of virtual machines. Suppose it's not just 2 virtual machines. Suppose you have 20 virtual machines there. You can connect them all to a private network. Or suppose 5 you want to connect to one private network or private switch, and 5 others you want to connect to another private switch, and then 5 other to another private switch. So you can create multiple private switches, as many in fact, because they're not connected to any physical NIC, so nothing else is required other than that. You just create it, and suppose sales department needs one private switch, marketing department needs one private switch for their own test virtual machines, and IT department and administration department, they all need that. So you can just create private switches for all those as well. So private switch I have created and given this name, and I'll click apply, and then O and K. Well, it goes away. If I right click and go back to virtual switch manager, so we can see that there are 3 virtual switches created here, right? So that would be one second screenshot number 2. 3 virtual switches created. Screenshot number 2, 3 virtual switches created. Screenshot number 2, 3 virtual switches created. Go ahead and take that and make sure you put your name there. So I'll take that sample screenshot now. And put it on OneNote first of all. Screenshot 2, 3 virtual switches created. And then I'll put it back to, this is the screenshot you're supposed to take while I put it on WhatsApp as well. 8 screenshot 2 3 virtual switches created. Oh, you got an error? Okay, go explain the external one more time. External? Yeah, so the external is external connects to external connects. Hamid is saying asking that. So external connects to the network card, while internal and private do not connect to a network card. Okay, you got it. Oh yeah, rename it. So once you click that, so on the right side, yes, I renamed it to your first name external virtual switch 1, because we're going to be creating a second one as well. So yeah, this is you can also go ahead and rename it like this: your first name external virtual switch 1. And then once you've renamed it, then take a screenshot 2, 3 virtual switches created. Okay, so your first name external virtual switch 1, and well, once we have created that and taken a screenshot here, 3 virtual switches created. Let's go ahead and I'll press OK here. Now this diagram here has talked about the 3 virtual switches, so I'll just copy this diagram and put it in OneNote as well. Okay, and the other one, so we're going to do this as well. So first of all, once we are creating a second external switch, for that we need to add a second NIC as well. In a production environment, it will be that you have to request downtime, and it will be a maintenance window, and you would do it on the weekends. You just migrate all the machines away from this virtual this hypervisor, and then shut it down, shut down the physical server, go to the data center, shut down the physical server, and then open the physical server, put more network cards there if they were not extra network cards remaining there. So once you put more network cards there, then you can connect external switches there. Now let's go ahead, and I'm going to add a second external switch, and I need to connect it to a NIC. So if I go directly here, and I'm going to go to the virtual switch manager again, and in that virtual switch manager, I already have 3 switches there. I'm going to be showing you when we create virtual machines that how to create their how to connect them to different switches. I was thinking that I show it now, but since we're talking about switches, so I'll just do that next one as well, which is that how to install a second external switch, and then how can we keep that data flow separate once we do create multiple virtual machines there, and those virtual machines are connected to the respective switches. For now, I'm going to create a second external switch. So I'm already there in this new virtual network switch. I'm going to click that, and when I already have clicked that external here, I'm going to click create virtual switch, right? So once I click the create virtual switch again while external was selected, and I'll switch to I'll stick to the naming convention, same naming convention here, your first name external virtual switch, but it is second one. So once I put that naming extension, and it selects external network, there is those options applied already, and there is just one network card. Okay, so far so kind of good. So that's a second external switch, and it's the same network card that is connected to the first external switch as well. So I'm just going to click apply here, and it's going to say pending changes may disrupt network connectivity. This computer may lose its network connection while the changes are applied. This may affect any network operations in progress. These changes also may override some static changes. If that happens, you must reapply the static changes to restore network connectivity. So I'm going to say yes. There's no processes going on right now. There are no live virtual machines here. So I'm going to press yes, but it's going to show this error. Okay, which error? This error. Adding ports to the switch 2 failed. The operation was passed a parameter that was not valid. So pretty much in English what it's saying is, hey, get another network card and then connect it to the second network card. What are you doing? So I don't have a second network card. But I just wanted to show you the error here, that this is not the way we can go ahead with the second external switch. You can create a second internal switch, no problem. You can create a second private switch, no issues, right? But when you create a second external switch, you need to have a second network card as well, which we don't have. Like if I go to the virtual machine on top of which we're working, if I right click here and go to settings, and it shows what? It shows one network card. Network adapter is just one. So we need a second network adapter to connect this second external switch. Okay, so Amir says I have a different error filled with while adding virtual Ethernet switch connections. Yes, Hamid, at this. In fact, I was actually looking for that error as well. Normally, it doesn't. The error does come, but it doesn't say exactly what I saw there. Hamid, you have 2019, or maybe it's a 2019 other version that other than what I have. I put 2019, but okay, you also have 2019, and I guess we downloaded from the same source the same day. Oh, okay. Then that's very strange that the errors are different, but errors will come because we can't connect to the same switch. In fact, if I try again, oh, now my error is the one that you have. View details. This is what I was expecting. So that was strange that the other error came. Okay, so this is the error you were saying, and it says pretty much exactly that please get another NIC. So I will not continue creating this. I'm gonna click cancel here, but I just wanted to show you the error. I canceled out from here, and I'm gonna go up there to add a second network card, then come back here and connect the second external switch to the second network card. So again, I just mentioned that if it was a production environment, you would go down to the data center and just simply shut down the server, add a second network card, and then come back here and then connect the second external switch to the second NIC. I'm going to right click here and go to settings. And it shows here one network adapter. I'm just going to go down to this add button here in the VMware Workstation 16. Actually 15, 14, 12 all are okay. It's the same way we do it.
Yo. Not really.
Oh.
Wait, what do you mean two? Who else is playing? Oh. We should play Rust. We should play Rust.
No, Rust is not good. Jacob says, nah, League is okay. Okay, so Dylan didn't know that his mic got unmuted. So I was like looking here and say, whoa, who's talking here? So, but yeah, we can discuss on that, Rust or League, right? Okay, so we were talking about this network adapter, so I'm just going to click add. And not again. Dylan, it's supposed to be -10 temperature, right? So okay, so I click the add button here and network adapter, and once we click the network adapter and click finito. So network adapter, finito, and that's the second network adapter. That's all we need to do. We don't have to actually restart this for it to detect the network adapter, but we're gonna still check it out if the second NIC is showing inside the host. First of all, if it's showing in the host, then it's gonna show in the Hyper-V as well, and press OK. So that was pretty simple and straightforward. Just click add, select the second network adapter, press OK. It's adding that. We'll just check if the host detected that, and we can go ahead with Hyper-V adding the second external switch as well. Well, the second NIC is added, but I'll check it out if it is detected or showing in the host operating system. I'm gonna close the Hyper-V, right? The Hyper-V manager. I'll close this and go to local server, and then the Ethernet 1 is showing there. I'll just click that Ethernet 1. We could just go to from here as well to open network and internet settings, or we can go from here. And once I click that, so you can see I added second NIC, but it does show 4 network adapters, or the icons are 4, but it's not exactly network adapters. It's V Ethernet, external virtual switch 1, and external virtual switch, which is 2. So the thing is that once you create external switches and they are connected to the NIC here, so the external virtual switch also shows as a separate adapter inside your network cards area or the network connections area inside your control panel. So when you create, we've created the internal switch and private switch as well, but these are not showing here. These external switches are always shown here as separate NICs. But Ethernet 0, Ethernet 1 is here. So extra network adapter is added here as Ethernet 1. So I'm going to, in fact, this is actually internal, sorry. So this is external virtual switch 1. This is not external second one because we couldn't create an external switch second one. This is actually internal that is showing here, but private is not showing here. So they do show as separate adapters in the network connections area as well. And these two are physical adapters, supposed to be physical adapters in a production environment, and these two appear as so if you have 5 external switches, then 5 of these will show here as well, and 5 internal adapters, then 5 of these will show here as well. Okay, so I confirm that yes, Ethernet 1 is also added there. I'm just gonna close this now and go to tools and open the Hyper-V manager again. And once you click the Hyper-V manager there, and I'm going to right click here and go to virtual switch manager, and we're going to try to create that second external switch again. So I'm going to, it's already selected on new virtual network switch and it's selected external. So we're going to try again now with create virtual switch. So here, as we did before, so your first name, external virtual switch 2, and we need to select the network adapter that is not already connected to any other external switch. So if I drop down, there is the second NIC now showing here. So I'm just gonna select that, and that's it. So you just put the name there. I'll just select that all, Control C and Control V here, and it is connected to the second external switch as well. And now I should not be getting any error. So I'll click apply here. It says still that hey, are you sure that if there's any other processes going on, any kind of copying going on over the network, so it's going to be disrupted. So I'll say yeah, I'm sure about that, just continue. But it should not give us an error. Sometimes it does, but okay, this is not one of those times. So well, the second external switch also got created now, and all we need to do is just press OK, and then we can right click here again and go to virtual switch manager. So 2 external virtual switches created as well. So that would be our screenshot number 3. Screenshot number 3 is second external, 2 external switches created. screenshot number 3, 2 external switches created. I'll take a sample screenshot number 3 here and go for 2 external switches created. So hopefully you're taking that. Oops, what I did. Screenshot 3, 2 external switches created. Screenshot 3, 2 external switches created. So this is the screenshot number 3 that you're supposed to take with your name. Okay, let's go ahead and we need to get the virtual machines up and running, and we're going to check that how do we connect to whichever switch we need to connect. So I'm going to press OK here after screenshot number 3, and the diagram, according to the diagram, we have the 2 switches in place here. So these 2 switches, and they are connected to their respective network adapters, but we need to create the 2 virtual machines, and then we need to, so there's a second scenario as well. First of all, we're going to go for the first scenario, which is that the 2 virtual machines are connected to their respective external switches. But what about if suppose the boss says, hey, I understand that the traffic is totally different here, but sometimes there's a software that we need to install in one machine, and that needs to be installed in other machine as well. So if that happens, then we need to have that these machines actually copying some software as well, right? So second scenario, I'll just put there while we need to do the first scenario. Second scenario, what if the 2 VMs on separate external switches want to communicate with each other as well? Their separate traffic flow must not be disrupted as well. While another way of the connectivity between the 2 can be made, the regular separation of their network flow should not be disrupted as well. So how about that then? Well, that can be achieved as well, and that can be achieved if you create one private switch right? Private switch, and that switch can be connected with that private switch can be connected to with the separate NICs of these 2 machines just to communicate with each other, not even to the host, and well, it's definitely not through the external switches. So they can still copy some files with each other and then get disconnected whenever they want, whenever they just want to copy something, whenever somebody wants to copy between the 2 machines, anything, you can just make that connection and then disconnect the second NICs from the switch after you have done copying, right? Without disrupting anything or the regular flow that is already there. So this can be achieved with the private switch with the second next status. So then it does not disrupt the traffic flow already. So we're going to do that too. But first of all, we need to achieve the first scenario here. And that is, can we keep a separate traffic flow? So let's go ahead and create the virtual machine number 1 and then the virtual machine number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and right click here on this server name on top of which the Hyper-V manager has been created. I'm going to go for new and then virtual machine. And then there is next. So what you see here is what you can also compare later when we create the virtual machines in the cloud as well, and you will then be able to understand how to go ahead. What are the differences between the two? If the virtual machine is created on premises in a virtual software and when they're created in the cloud, although both are virtual environments, but definitely there are some big differences as well. Both environments actually have to have high availability and disaster recovery features. Obviously, the on-premises environment is also of a company, and on the cloud, it's also for a company. So obviously in both environments. So we don't have that kind of configurations done here in Hyper-V to enable high availability. Suppose you want to move or migrate a virtual machine from one Hyper-V to another. If you want to see that lab and how it is done, yeah, I can just share that lab with you. It's just in the videos recorded already in some other class. But what we can do here is that we will just follow up with this. So I'm going to just go ahead and create your first name dash VM dash 1, right? And it says here that store the virtual machine in a different location. Yes, it can be stored in a different location as well. Now, just like you may remember that we discussed that if you want the virtual machines to be highly available, then you have to not create the virtual machines on a local storage. You have to create it on a shared storage or a storage from SAN or LUNs, logical unit numbers, right? So if I show this environment, then normally how it should be in a virtual environment, and it's very it becomes even more important for virtual environments, especially that if you have virtual machine, these are the hypervisors, suppose. So hyper, right? So these hypervisors, and you have local disks there, right? So the virtual machines are supposed to be created on top of obviously the shared disks, not the local disks. All the diagrams are here. Well, for the VMware class. Yeah, so when you use where did it go? 2 times. Oh, okay, it looked better. So that's a SAN, HP SAN tower that has rows and rows of columns and columns of disks, or rows and rows of disks there, right? Your company would have a big company would have this 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 solution, and those disks are really fast as well. But if you want that to be there, then you have to have obviously the fiber optic connection there, right? So that fiber optic switch, your company has to purchase fiber optic cables and fiber optic network cards, physical network adapters that need to be purchased. So that solution becomes really expensive then. So you connect through fiber optic network cards that over the network connection from SAN to those hypervisors and storage area network. And these hypervisors have then so same disk would be connected to through big company it would be through fiber optic, and in small companies it would be iSCSI, which is Ethernet based, and the shared disk would be created there, and that shared disk is a must in a virtual environment. Without this, the virtual environment is not professional. If you have created a virtual machine, suppose, and that virtual machine is its virtual disk is on top of a physical disk, then that's not a very good solution, right? So that's a physical disk, and that would be virtual disk, right? And that's virtual machine. That's a shared disk one or shared disk over the network. Network. Shared disk over the network. So the best practice obviously would be that if you have a virtual environment, Hyper-V from Microsoft or VMware ESXi hypervisor, so your disk would always be created on top of a shared disk and never ever on a local disk. So that's just part of a professional environment, that your disk would always be on a your virtual disk will always be sitting on a shared disk or LAN and never ever on a local disk. If this machine goes down, it takes down the disk with it, and you're waiting for the machine to get up and running, and you can't do anything. But if this machine goes down and the disk was on a shared disk or LAN, then this shared disk or LAN is attached here and is also attached here as well, right? So you can access through this server this virtual disk, which is on this shared disk, and if this server goes down, right, then through this server also the same LAN logical unit number or shared disk is attached to this server as well, and you can just connect this to this virtual disk from this server as well. So that's a very important configuration that you cannot afford to miss. And this is the so that this whole discussion is all about that. If it's a virtual environment, never ever create your virtual machine's virtual disk on a local physical disk. It has to be on a shared disk always, right? So, but here, so first of all, I'll just take that screenshot just to put it there. So when we are creating this virtual machine here, it should not be on a local disk, but obviously we don't have that SAN environment created here, so that's why it's going to be a local disk for now. But the best practice, as we just talked in the diagram as well, is to have it on LANs or shared disks. I'm going to click next here after putting this name, and then there is generation 1 and generation 2 virtual machines. Generation 1 is just available as legacy for the legacy applications or older applications, right? And generation 2, so you can see already it's this virtual machine generation supports 32-bit. Now 32-bit is not common anymore, right? It's all 64-bit hardware, 64-bit applications there. No one actually uses, well, there are many big companies that may still have some legacy applications, and maybe the developers ran away, the company shut down, and that application may be earning those companies like still it's running the whole company, and they just don't have any technical support, so they keep on running those older applications, and don't have the budget to go for newer applications, or it's not the same features there that they really desperately want for their business. So in that case, they can go for backward compatibility, and they can just simply put a virtual machine with a legacy application that only supports 32-bit architecture. So in that case, you will go for generation 1 machines. Otherwise, generation 2 machines, obviously, you would go for that only supports 64-bit architecture for operating system applications and applications. And once you select whichever generation you want to select, and if you're done with the wizard, then after the machine is created, you cannot change that generation. So it's only here you can, during the creation, you can only choose the generation. So I'm going to click next here, and then there is startup memory here, that initially how much memory is needed for the virtual machine. And it could be, so obviously you would, if you're planning to have here 20 virtual machines here, so you better have good underlying hardware there, maybe 512 GB RAM or 1 terabyte RAM, and terabytes of SSD disk there, and 16 core 32 core processor. So then you can go for, and suppose this virtual machine that you're creating after on that virtual machine you're putting some database, and the whole virtual machine all the time would need at least 32 GB RAM or 64 GB RAM for it to run properly. So in that case, underlying hardware RAM better be good. So here, startup memory, if I just check my host virtual machine memory here, settings, and it has 16 GB, which is enough, which is good. So I can just give it 8 GB. So here 8084, I can give that. And that's startup memory as well, as initially it will be provided that. So that's a lot already in terms of the training environment. And I intend to install an operating system actually, so it will be then much easier to deploy that, although it's kind of tricky to install an operating system inside a virtual machine. So use dynamic memory for this virtual machine. When you decide how much memory to assign to a virtual machine, consider how you intend to use the virtual machine and the operating system that it will run. So, well, the dynamic memory basically is used, or this option is for that if the virtual machine runs out of the 8 GB RAM that was allotted to it, then it can automatically request more RAM from the underlying hypervisor, and hypervisor is supposed to provide that kind of RAM to this virtual machine. So if dynamic memory is there, so it can ask for more RAM, and hypervisor has to provide that, right? And well, once this is selected, I'm going to click next. And now you can see that it is asking for configure networking. Each new virtual machine includes a network adapter. You can configure the network adapter to use a virtual switch, or it can remain disconnected. So obviously, and you can see all the switches that we've created already are showing here. So I'm going to select that switch 1, and this is the virtual switch 1. So when I create the second virtual machine, I'm going to connect it to the second switch. So for now it's just one switch. I'm just gonna click next, then it shows a virtual connect virtual disk, hard disk, right? A virtual machine requires storage so that you can install an operating system. You can specify the storage now or configure it later by modifying the virtual machine's properties. So anyway, the default storage is 127 GB, 127 GB, right? But it also says it is dynamically expanding, which is also called thin provisioning. So in thin provisioning or dynamically expanding, it does not occupy the whole space on your physical disk. It only occupies that much space on your physical disk which the software needs. The software that will be installed on this virtual machine that we're about to create, whatever software space that software needs, that will be actually occupied on your physical disk. So we're going to be installing Windows 2016 or 2019 here inside the virtual machine as well. It's going to be nested virtualization, obviously. So so that Windows 2019 actually takes what, 8 GB up to 12 GB. So your physical disk will actually take 8 up to 12 GB RAM, but not 127 GB RAM, right? And it can go up to 64 terabyte RAM as well. So that's a lot. So the name of the virtual disk is same as the name of the virtual machine. So this is the virtual disk extension of a Microsoft Hyper-V virtual machine, .vhdx. If it was a VMware virtual machine, then the extension would be .vmdk. But it's a Microsoft virtual machine, so it's a .vhdx, right? So yeah, create a virtual disk, or use an existing virtual disk, or attach a virtual disk later. So you want to create a virtual machine without a virtual disk, you can do that. Or existing virtual machine virtual disk could be that you created a virtual disk and attached it to one virtual machine, then you copied a lot of software from that virtual machine onto that virtual disk. Then you can detach that virtual disk and attach it to, suppose, this virtual machine. So you can attach an existing virtual disk which may have some data as well already placed there. So you can move a virtual disk from one virtual machine to another virtual machine as well. Jericho says, sorry sir, but it was the configuration in networking? What was the configuration in networking? That was like way back. Okay, but yeah, let me just finish this and I'll show you the configuration on the networking. We already took 3 screenshots. Just the configure networking part. Oh, okay, here on this window. If we go back, this is the network. External visual switch 1. That's it. So yeah, go ahead and select that, and let's go ahead. Okay, so well, we talked about this virtual disk related stuff, but we're going to be talking a bit more about that too later. I'm going to click that. So nothing to change on this page, and I'll click next. Now here on this page is where we're going to give the path of the ISO, the operating system, because we need to install an operating system inside this virtual machine. So we can give a path here. How do we give a path? If I click here, install an operating system from a bootable image file. So there's a browse button here, but when I click browse, it's not going to go to my laptop. It's going to see the folder structure of the host, and the host is this virtual machine, on top of which there's a Hyper-V, and on top of this Hyper-V, inside this Hyper-V is this virtual machine that is about to be created. So when we click browse, if I click browse here, so and I go to downloads, so there's nothing inside. Documents, there's nothing inside because it's looking at the folder structure of this host operating system. And if I go there to the host operating system here, documents, downloads, there's nothing here. right? So what we need to do is to copy from outside of VMware Workstation the ISO of Windows. You can choose Windows 10, Windows 2016, Windows 2019, whichever. Just you need to go outside to your physical laptop, copy it inside here in the OS, so the virtual machine that we're about to create can see that too when it clicks browse. So I have already opened that yellow folder, the file explorer of the host virtual machine, and the downloads folder I'm going to copy from outside of the VMware Workstation from my laptop, from my physical machine to this virtual machine now. So I'll go outside here to the file explorer, and this is my physical machine now. I'll go inside my physical machine, the folder structure where I have ISOs available there, and I have 2016 here and 2019 here as well. So yeah, doesn't matter, whichever. So okay, I'll go for 2019 here as well. And I'll first paste it inside the host operating system's downloads folder. So the virtual machine that is the guest will be picking up the operating system from the folder structure of the host virtual machine. Okay, so it's copied already, and I'm going to minimize this. I'll go to image file, click browse, and downloads. So now I can see that. So first you have to copy from physical machine to virtual machine, then you can see that for this virtual machine inside the Hyper-V that we're about to create. I'm going to give that path here, and now this virtual machine that we're about to create will have an operating system as well. I'm just going to click next. So this is the summary of our virtual machine. So it will be our screenshot number 4 now. Screenshot number 4. Summary of first VM. Summary of first VM. We can just name it summary of first VM. So take a screenshot. Hopefully you're taking a screenshot now. So let me just take that sample. Let me go ahead. I'll take a screenshot of this summary of first VM. I'll just go ahead and put it screenshot for summary of first VM. So this is a screenshot we need to take. COMP3108 summary of first VM. Alright, so I'll just go ahead now. Hopefully you've taken the screenshot, and I'm gonna click finish here, and it's gonna start creating the virtual machine now. Hopefully no error comes. Okay, I'll expand this Hyper-V. So the virtual machine is created. It is in the off state. I'll just right click here and click the start. It is starting now, 10%, and I'll just have to right click again. First I right clicked and start, right? Then I have to right click again and connect, because I want to see inside and control and give some input for the operating system being installed now. So first right click and start, then second right click, connect. I'm going to click connect here, and it should open its screen. Alright, so it's asking press any key to boot from CD DVD. Yes, I'm supposed to do that. I missed it. So I'll just reset it again, right? So reset is here as well. This one. Reset. This time when it restarts again, I'm going to click first on top of this black screen here, so I could go inside the virtual environment, and then I'll press any key on the keyboard to catch this option and start the installation of Windows, right? So I'm about to reset, which is this key, right? I'm about to restart that. This time I'll try to grab this. So first I click on top of this, and then I click some button here on the keyboard, and oops, okay, let me just show that again. I'll make that screen full for the VMware workstation. Okay, so I do see that it's installing fine. Okay, so Jacob says, sir, what virtual switch did we connect the VM to? Oh, it was the first external virtual switch. First external virtual switch. External switch 1. So it would be, if you have created according to the naming convention, would be Jacob external virtual switch 1. Okay. And I'll just change that time and currency format here. It will select the time zone. Okay, Brady says, I'm stuck with a black screen after hitting connect after start. So, why? You're stuck with a black. Yeah, so did you restart it? After restart, you need to click on top of the screen and then select any key on the keyboard. Brady and Hamid. So you have to just restart again. And Jericho says error. Guys, you need to share your screen. It says run out of memory. Okay, Jericho. So if you have given 8 GB RAM like I did, so you need to check that what is the total memory you have in your laptop or desktop. If you have total memory 8 GB yourself for the physical, then you need to give 4 GB RAM to the virtual machine. If you have total 4 GB RAM, then you can give 2 GB RAM to the virtual machine, right? You have 16, okay. Oh, you have 8. I gave 8, okay. Well, if it ran out of memory still, so go for 4. Shut down the machine, change the memory to 4. And that it should not say ran out of memory if you have 16. If you have anything else running, you have to close all the Chrome windows there and any other application that's running in the background, so free up memory, and or ultimately just give it 4 GB. It's going to work with 4 as well. It's going to be just slower. Hamid says yes, but I think maybe the ISO file has a problem. Oh, okay. Yes, it is possible. It depends on the error. You can share this error screen, and if you try it multiple times, yes, it could be the ISO as well. And you can just download a new one and try it. It depends on the error. So I was just changing that to English Canada, and Canada, and that's it. I'll just click next. Then it's just install now and next page, right? Okay, so there's that screenshot here. Oh, UEFI. So no operating system found. Because the bootloader did not load an operating system. Boot image was not. Oh, boot image. So it did not connect to the virtual machine's DVD, and it has. So either you can change the boot sequence, try to reset, and does it give that press any key to boot? If it gives that press any key to boot, then you just need to select the screen and try to press any key on the keyboard. But if it doesn't say that, then yes, It could be the ISO as well, issue with the ISO. You just try another one. If you have 2016, okay, so I'll click the install now. And it's a straightforward installation from here. Next, finish. It's kind of dirt slow. Okay, so I'll go for standard evaluation desktop, right? And click next. So I still need GUI here. And Brady shows a screenshot. What's wrong with it? It's okay. Yep, that's exactly how it should go. No problem here. What did you select? No, nothing selected here. It was default. On the next screen, I went to browse and then gave the path of the ISO. This screen is okay. Nothing changed. I'll click the accept license terms. Next, and we're not upgrading. We're just doing a new installation, so it's custom, not upgrade. Custom. We need to select custom, and I'll click custom. We're not partitioning the space. It's already thin provisioned or dynamically expanding. So I'll click next. That's it. Okay, so it's gonna install now. Okay, so well, hopefully those who were trying were able to do that. Okay, so it's just installing. Okay guys, let's take a break and we'll come back after the break. I'll just put that sign here. Mute and pause. Now, and what I'm expecting is that the file would have been installed. Yeah, it's just asking for username, password. Oh well, just the password. Small ABC, equal ABC, shape 123, large shape 123, small ABC, capital ABC, shape 123, large shape 123. So I'll just give that excuse me, username, password. Well, once the password is given, I'll just log into this virtual machine, which is created inside the Hyper-V, and that Hyper-V is on top of an operating system, which is a virtual machine inside VMware Workstation. So nested virtualization. So Now it's just asking for the credentials, so I'm just going to click that 3 dots here. Excuse me. So it's going to be slower now because although it's 8 GB RAM, which is good enough, but underlying the physical laptop has a recording software going on, and as well as Chrome is open there. In fact, lots of that is open, so that's why the virtual machine is not getting enough RAM. But anyway, it's installed, and we're excuse me, logging in. Oops, I think I put the password too fast. Where's the mobile user? But okay, so it's 1ABC, capital ABC, shape 1, 2, 3, dot shape 1, 2, 3. Wow, it's too slow. But we don't need to really go inside this. Just wanted to show that in a virtualization environment, then how do you really put the operating system inside. So I'm just going to put that machine inside. I'll on the left side, I'll just close this, make the full screen wider. And while this is trying to log in, I'm just going to minimize this, or I'll just close this. You know, when we click close, it's just the okay, I'll just click close here. So the machine in the background is still running. It's just that the screen through which we were looking inside the machine is just closed, while in the background the machine still keeps running. Yeah, Chrome is enough to slow down anything. It's so now, if we go for Edge browser, so they really boast about being lighter, much lighter than Chrome, which is actually true. Okay, so the machine is created here and it is connected. So if I go to that diagram here, so one machine is connected to Tor external switch, which was our first switch, and this virtual machine here, through its one network card, is connected to this Tor external switch. And I'll just create another machine, and I don't have to install an operating system now. I just showed you how to do all that. So I'll create another virtual machine which we can pretend that it has an operating system as well. I just need to show you how outside we can connect the networking components of a Microsoft hypervisor called Hyper-V. So I'll just create second virtual machine, but I will not be putting an operating system. It's going to be an empty virtual machine, but we just need a virtual machine to actually show that how network equipment of those virtual machine connects to the Hyper-V virtual switch, which is just network card. So I'm going to right click again here and click new and go for new virtual machine, second one. And click next. Since it's going to be empty, so it's not going to take space, it's not going to take CPU, and not going to take the RAM as well. So I'll just go for your first name dash VM dash 2, and next. I'll go for generation 2 for this one as well. Next. I'll just keep it 1024 because there will be no operating system inside, so it's going to be pretty light anyway. I'll click next, but I'm connecting this to the second switch, right? Just to show that technically in a virtual environment you can make the virtual machine path totally different for two virtual machines in the same hypervisor. So I'm just connecting it to virtual switch 2, which is connected to a second network card, right? I'll click next. No change on the connect virtual hard disk as before. I'll click next, but now I'm not gonna give an operating system path, right? So I'll keep it install an operating system later. So it's going to be an empty, light virtual machine. We don't need an operating system inside. We're just talking about all the components and features of a virtual machine and the Hyper-V hypervisor. So that's the summary of the second virtual machine. We don't need to take a screenshot here, so I'm just going to click finish. We don't need to, that's what I said. And well, so this machine is added. If I right click and start it, it's gonna start, but obviously there's no operating system inside, so it's gonna just give an error. So if I right click the second virtual machine and click connect, well, there's nothing inside, so it's gonna just give an error, which is okay. I'm gonna close that, and the two machines are running here, but they are, first machine is connected to the first external switch, and the second machine is connected to the second external switch. And now this is according to the diagram, the first scenario is fulfilled, that create two separate switches connected to two separate network adapters, and two virtual machines connect to their respective separate switch each. And then we can go to the second scenario. So technically it's just pretty straightforward, that you connect one virtual machine to one switch and second virtual machine to the second switch, and that's how we already know they are connected to separate network cards, so the whole network flow is different for both virtual machines living in the same Hyper-V. But the second scenario says that you need to still from time to time copy some files from one machine to another. So these machines should also be connected to a private switch. So if it's just one network card, so one network card can connect to any one switch at one time. So you need to have a separate second network card to connect to another switch for the same machine. And you can connect, whenever you want to copy the file, you can connect the second network cards of both machines to the private switch. Once you've copied, then you can just disconnect those network cards from the private switch as well. You can do that too. So now the second scenario, I'm just going to go to the virtual machine 1 and then 2 and add a second network adapter, because we already have a private switch created, right? So I'm going to go for scenario 2 and add extra network card on both virtual machines. So how do we do that? I'll just go back to the Hyper-V. For the first virtual machine, I need to create a second virtual network card for this machine. So I'm going to right click here and go to settings. And excuse me. So I can see that add hardware is there, and there's network adapter. So network adapter is one thing that can be added while the virtual machines are started. But if you want to add another disk, you want to add video adapter or fiber channel adapter, then you have to shut down the machine, because these are grayed out while the machine is running. So it's already on the add hardware. We're going to be talking about these features as well. So first machine, I click hardware and network adapter, and I click add. And then once I click add, you can see that there was first network adapter connected to the external virtual switch 1. So now I've added a second network adapter, and it's basically on not connected, but I'm just going to drop down and connect it to a private switch. So first network adapter of this machine, external switch, second network adapter of this machine to private switch. And I'll click apply and OK. Then I'll go to the second machine and do the same thing. I'll go for settings. It's already on add hardware, and while the machine started, we can actually only add network adapter. So I'll click the network adapter and click add. It gets added here, and then I'll simply go for private switch here as well. So one NIC to external switch, second NIC to private switch. Now this will be our screenshot number 5. Let's take screenshot number 5, and two NICs 1 VM, 2 NICs, and 2 switches. So we can say 1 VM, 2 NICs, 2 virtual switches, comma, we can say. So 1 VM, 2 NICs, 2 switches, or 2 virtual switches. I'll take a screenshot of this. 1 VM, 2 NICs, 2 virtual switches. Take a screenshot of this. It's basically of this. I'll go to screenshot 5. 1 VM, comma, 2 NICs, comma, 2 virtual switches. 1 VM, 2 NICs, 2 virtual switches, and paste. So this is the screen of which you need to take a screenshot. I'll put that there. Screenshot 5. 1 VM, comma, 2 NICs, comma, 2 switches. Okay, so hopefully we've taken the screenshot number 5, and let's go ahead. I'll just click apply, and that's how we can have that. So if we go to that diagram, we have understood that we can have separate external switches. Each external switch has to connect to a separate NIC, and then virtual machines can connect to any of those, and then second is same virtual machines can connect to another switch. We just need to have extra virtual network cards there as well. So this is the full diagram that we tried to understand. And I'll just put this here. And then let's go ahead with the rest. So we talked about virtual switches, then there are virtual machines that we created there. If we go right click to our virtual machine, there is that connect, settings, turn off, shut down, save, pause, reset, checkpoint, move, export, rename, enable replication. So connect, we already see that we can see connect to the machine and go inside and make configuration and use the machine basically. And settings, if we go there, so I'll click the settings here, and we already know that we can add virtual hardware to the virtual machine like virtual CPU, virtual RAM, virtual network adapter, virtual disk. So then there is firmware of this virtual machine, and that is you can just change the boot order there as well. If you shut down the machine, you can just change the boot order. In fact, while the machine is running, I'm able to do that, which is strange. So if I go for DVD and move up, so first it's gonna now boot from DVD. So it just checks the which is the boot device in the background, or well, which is the first boot device, and if there is a bootable or boot files or start files there, and then it starts or boots from there. So if I click apply to this, so while the machine is running in 2019, this is the case that we can change the boot order while the machine is running. It was not allowing that in, I think, 2012 or 2016. So other than that, so that's the boot order in firmware that you can change. And other than that, there's security here. Well, yeah, the rest of the options are, majority of the options you will see as grayed out because the machine is running. I'll just cancel out from here and right click and turn off the machine. If I shut down the machine, first of all, so shutdown is always the safer way to it just waits for all the OS services to stop, and then it shuts down. Turn off is like you're pulling off the plug, and the software, the operating system, it's not really guaranteed that any file would be not corrupted. So now I turn it off. I'm going to right click here and go to settings, and there's the security here. So now you can see the options are enabled for the virtual machine. So use secure boot to help prevent unauthorized code from running at boot time or starting time. If the hackers can put some code there, that malicious software, right, ransomware or anything else. Okay, I'll just put my table up. So, yeah, we're talking about security, and we had to turn off the machine to see those options, otherwise they were grayed out. And secure boot, so, well, it's just going to secure your starting files of the operating system, and if there's some malicious code that was copied there and it was planned to attack the starting files when you're trying to start the operating system at that time, they're just gonna really not let you do that. So secure boot just simply secures your starting process and starting files. And then there's template, Microsoft Windows, and UEFI certificate authority, and open source shielded VM. So there are so many features here which offer encryption as well as extra certificate authority. Basically, you would just go for certificate is used for encrypting files, and so you can just deploy a security certificate. You can go to GoDaddy.com to purchase a security certificate, or DigiCert or VeriSign.com websites to get a security certificate from there. And so other than that, encryption support. So enable trusted platform module. So a trusted platform module, or TPM, is a special purpose microprocessor which provides cryptographic services to a compute platform. So TPM is supported here as well. TPM basically is in a physical server. It's a chipset that saves your encryption and decryption files, and here it's gonna just virtually save your encryption and decryption files within the virtual machine. So if your virtual disk, the virtual disk of a virtual machine is detached from the virtual machine, right? Somebody actually unauthorized suppose somebody without authorization detaches your critical data disk, virtual disk, from a virtual machine. So if this disk is encrypted and the encryption keys are in a file that is separate from the disk, right? So it would be in the virtual machine files. So in that case, if somebody detaches the disk and just simply copies away that file, copies in USB and takes it away and tries to attach to another virtual machine, but won't be able to decrypt it because its encryption and decryption keys are with the virtual machine files separately saved. So the whole virtual machine has to be copied for the disk, and then the credentials to log in should be known to properly go inside the machine as well and see the data in the disk. Encryption support requires a key protector KP configuration for the virtual machine. If not already present, selecting one of these options will generate a KP or key provider that allows running the virtual machine on this host. So the TPM, it just says that you need to know where to save your encryption and decryption keys, and for that you need to, it's going to create a key provider, which is just another file which just simply secures your encryption and decryption keys. And then security policy here, specify additional protection options for the virtual machine, enable shielding. Excuse me. This affects additional settings, and learn more about virtual machine security. So it just has that on the website as well, extra information. If we go there, I'll just copy that, close it. So it talks about use of virtual machine security settings in Hyper-V Manager to help protect the data and state of a virtual machine. You can protect virtual machine from inspection, theft, and tampering from both malware that may run on the host and data center administrators. The level of security you get depends on the host hardware excuse me, you run. The virtual machine generation and whether you set up the service called the host guardian service that authorizes hosts to start shielded virtual machines. So it's all about securing the virtual machine files and guarding the whole virtual machine, because taking away a virtual machine, just you need to create a copy of a virtual machine and its virtual disks, and that's it. Put in a USB or external drive or upload to cloud, and that's it, you're gone. So that's why since it's easy to if it was a physical server, it's relatively easier to hack a virtual machine or copy a virtual machine and get away with it. So that's why even if the virtual machine is copied, so it should be heavily encrypted, so users or the hackers would not be able to decrypt any of the data inside the virtual machine. So for that, they go for whole shielded VM concept there. So there's a secure boot they're talking about, encryption support settings in Hyper-V, and isolated user mode. Then there is trusted platform module and security policy in Hyper-V. So for more virtual machine security, use the enable shielding option to disable management features like console connection, PowerShell Direct, and some integration components. If you select this option, secure boot, enable trusted platform module, and encrypt state and VM migration traffic options are selected and enforced. So that's VM shielding is pretty cool. That first of all, any kind of remote connectivity options will be disabled, and all the security configurations will be forcefully enabled, right? So that's enable shielding, that's what it means. So that is really going to secure a virtual machine in case there's so suppose it's a really critical virtual machine and you're also suspicious of some activity that was going on that was not supposed to happen, some unauthorized entries into your network. So you could just shield the virtual machine right away in case somebody is trying to get away with a copy of this virtual machine. So that is just enable shielding option. So all remote connectivity is disabled, all security features are enabled. Okay, if we go ahead, so that's the enable shielding option. This affects additional settings. So this would be our screenshot number 6, virtual machine security. Screenshot number 6, virtual machine security. Screenshot number 6. Let's take a screenshot here. So I'll take a screenshot of the virtual machine security options here. Copied. So screenshot 6, VM security options. Virtual machine or VM security options. COMP3108, screenshot 6, VM security options. So VM security options, this is the screen that you're supposed to take a screenshot of, and then the name is VM security options. Okay, so once we go ahead, so there's that memory here, and in the memory, there's that RAM we have given 8 GB. There's dynamic memory. You're gonna allow the amount of memory available on this virtual machine to change dynamically within the range you set. There is that enable dynamic memory, and it goes from 512 MB to 1 terabyte, you can say. But you can just put a maximum limit here as well, that don't go more than 64 GB, because other virtual machines are also going to be requesting the memory during the peak hours. So at that time, if you allow this machine to grab all the memory, or all other machines to grab as much memory as they can, so whichever has more traffic of users and more activity going on, it will grab the memory or more memory first. When other machines get busy as well, and slowly the users are connecting to other machines as well, and especially suppose the later machines are actually critical ones as well, they would get a lesser share of the memory, because it would be all coming from the remaining memory. And the earlier machines that got busy, maybe they were non-critical, and the users connected there first, and it just got all the memory. So it could be like that. So that's why for non-critical machines, you could actually set the maximum RAM to certain value, like 32 GB. Don't go more than that. It's a non-critical machine. While for critical machine, you can keep those options there for to be able to use more memory during the peak hours. Peak hours are you can say 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. when everyone's busy and accessing files, so all machines are always consuming more memory and processing. So critical machines should have more maximum RAM supplied to them, while non-critical machines should be specially not be given more memory. If we don't put a cap here, we will suffer, and the critical machines will suffer, which means the company will suffer as well. And memory buffer here, and that is just it's trying to specify the percentage of memory that Hyper-V should try to reserve as a buffer. Hyper-V uses the percentage and the current demand for memory to determine an amount of memory for the buffer. So it just says that it's going to try to predict or anticipate that what memory would be needed, and it buffers or stores that memory. So maybe it requests from the hypervisor that, okay, I am anticipating the way it's just increasing in demand of memory, I'm anticipating that 20% more memory would be required. So I'm just saving that much memory now, so when it is required, I'll just make it available for the virtual machine, and then it buffers some more and just buffers some more. So that's 20%. And then memory weight, specify how to prioritize the availability of memory for this virtual machine compared to the other virtual machines on this computer. So is this machine a VIP machine? Suppose it is, you can give much higher weight here, and the weight is higher, obviously this machine would be given more importance. Hypervisor will be making sure that this machine gets what it needs, and then the rest of the machines. So obviously the rest of the machines, you can just put that for non-critical machines, even go lower than here, that first whichever machine's weight is higher gets what they want in terms of RAM, and then it will just hypervisor will tend to the machines that have lower weight. So it's all about priority. It's all about the criticality of the virtual machine. Is it really important that this virtual machine get this during peak hours when every virtual machine is fighting for the memory and CPU? So this is what the weight really does. So screenshot number 7 would be VM memory options. Screenshot number 7, virtual machine memory options. Screenshot number 7, virtual machine memory options. Make sure your name is showing when you're putting your screenshots. Screenshot 7, VM memory options. So this is the screenshot you need to take. 8 screenshot 7 VM memory options. Okay, so we'll then the processor has also some options there. Number of virtual processors, you can just increase that. And if I just cancel out from here and power on, start this VM, once it is started, if I right click here, go to settings again, and check the processor. So yes, and memory as well. So it's not hot pluggable, or you can't change or increase even the memory while it is started. Same for the processor, makes sense. If I go to hard disk while the machine is started, no, other than we can inspect or monitor, we can do anything else. But it's just a network adapter. In fact, in the network adapter, you can't make any changes while the machine is started. Other than firmware, even firmware, we cannot do that. So while it is running, seriously, before it was running and I checked it, it was, editable here. Now it's not, and that's how it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to change that. Okay, so I'll cancel out and shut down the machine. Off. Right click, settings. So processor, you can modify the number of virtual processors based on the number of processors on the physical computer. You can also modify other resource control settings, number of virtual processors, how many you want to give, and then resource control. You can use resource controls to balance resources among virtual machines. Virtual machine reserve, so that's you're reserving what percentage of processing you want to reserve. So it all depends on, if this virtual machine is a critical one, you would reserve something. When you reserve something, that then the hypervisor has to provide that to you, to your virtual machine, and it's just like the memory weight. When you increase that, so hypervisor has to provide you that memory. Hypervisor first has to listen to you, and the relative weight here also is showing. So the virtual machine reserve, you would just whatever percentage you give, that much processing hypervisor has to provide to this virtual machine, and percent of total system resources. Then virtual machine limit as well. This is, so reserve normally is the minimum and limit is the maximum. So it cannot go more than 100%, obviously. If it takes 100% even, then everything else will freeze. So other than that, that's just a relative weight. If every machine has the same weight, then no one has. So other machines, if you want them not to be asking for the same level of processing, suppose this one is a critical machine, so for other machines you can just decrease the weight and keep the weight highest for the critical machine here. So then the hypervisor will have to make sure that this machine gets whatever processing it needs first. So other than that, there is a SCSI controller, and you can add hard drives here as well. You can add hard drives and CD/DVD drives to your SCSI controller, or remove the SCSI controller from the virtual machine. Select the type of drive you want to attach to the controller, and then click add. So you want to add a second drive, you can do that. DVD drive, shared drive as well. If I go to the hard drive, this is a SCSI controller where you can just start adding drives as well. If you go to the hard drive itself, so you can see that there's a SCSI controller, and then in use 0, then there is SCSI controller 2 where you can attach another disk, 3 attach another disk, and it goes down to 63 disks you can or channels from the virtual machine to the virtual disk that you can create. So you can compact, convert, expand, merge, reconnect, or shrink a virtual disk by editing the associated file. Specify the full path to the file. So there are, you can just add a new disk here as well, edit disk, you can inspect disk and browse. So inspect basically is going to give you the current size of the disk. Suppose I click the inspect button here, and it gives maximum size 127, current file size is 9 GB. So we installed an operating system, and that took 9.47 GB on the physical disk. So 127 is just thin provisioned, or in Microsoft they say dynamically expanding. So inspect is showing that, right? But then if we go to edit, so then it says, oh, you want to edit the virtual disk of this virtual machine. So we'll click next. Then you can compact the disk. This option compacts the file size of a virtual hard disk. The storage capacity of the virtual hard disk remains the same, but the file size can decrease. Convert, so it can convert from .vhd x to .vhd. So what are those? The virtual disk extension of Microsoft machines. So if I go way up there, okay, yeah, this one, storage. So VHDX is the virtual disk extension of the virtual disk of a virtual machine in Microsoft Hyper-V. So you can say Microsoft hypervisor, which is Hyper-V, Hyper-V's. Okay, I'll just go for Hyper-V's virtual machine, virtual disks extension. So I can just add one more thing to that. Microsoft Windows Server 2012, 2016, 2019 server OS's hypervisor, Hyper-V's virtual machines, virtual disks extension is called VHDX, and that is going to be then what is VHD? So VHD would be the Windows Server 2008. That's it. So 2008, right? So Windows Server 2008, Windows Server 2008 server OS is hypervisor, Hyper-V's virtual machines, virtual disks extension. So VHD is the older hypervisor virtual machine, virtual disk extension. It's basically a virtual disk extension, but from which OS, that you just need to know. So it's an older one, VHD, and later one, 2012, 2016, 2019. If you create a virtual machine, then its virtual disk will have the extension .vhdx. The other extra information is that on Azure Cloud, .vhdx is still not compatible, while .vhd is still acceptable there. So this means that if you have a virtual machine here and the boss says, hey, can you just detach the disk from the Windows 2016 virtual machine and upload it to Microsoft Azure Cloud, and then attach this disk to the Azure Cloud. So you will have, if it's a Windows 2016 virtual machine virtual disk, since we know that .vhdx is not supported up there still, strange, so you would have to convert the .vhdx to .vhd and then upload it to Microsoft Azure Cloud and then attach it to the Microsoft Azure virtual machine. So if we go ahead, there is convert as well, right? So compact, convert, expand. So convert, if I click and go to next, so it says that, hey, you want to convert from VHDX to VHD or VHD to VHDX, so whichever you want to convert to whichever. It's already VHDX right now. You want to convert it to VHD, select that and go next, and it converts this disk to VHD, the older format for backward compatibility, plus Azure Cloud compatibility as well. This is useful. So that's why this convert option is pretty useful. So if I click previous, so this would be screenshot number 8, that virtual machine edit options, VM edit options. So you can take a screenshot number 8, VM edit options. Screenshot 8, VM edit options. I'll take a screenshot now and screenshot 8, VM edit options. I'll just go back. So this is the screenshot you need to take. VM edit options. Okay, so we can convert, we can expand, and we can compact as well. Excuse me. If I click expand here and then click next, so it just says what is the new size you want for this disk, and it suggests 128. It could increase from 107 to 128. We already know it's thin provisioned or dynamically expanding, so it's not going to take all this space on it. So excuse me. So it's 128 GB. We can just keep it like that. We can in fact go for, because it can go for 64 terabyte, right? So if I suppose put here 200 GB, right? Knowing that it is thin provisioned or dynamically expanding, so it's not going to take all this space on my physical disk. So if I just put here 200 GB, that please expand my disk from 127 GB to 200 GB. So if I click next and finito. Now if I press OK, yeah, the processing didn't really happen, or there was no long delay and wait there. I'm just going to right click here and go to settings again and go to the hard drive again. Now I need to inspect the drive if it shows something else. Yes, it does show that it has changed to 200 GB. So VM expanded, and it's the expand option works, or this is the way it works. So I'm going to close that. And then there is new, yeah, you can just create a new disk and attach it here as well to this virtual machine. So it will be 2 disks. And then there is that physical hard disk written here. So that is also called pass-through disk. So pass-through disk is just that you need a disk that is raw. Like this is a virtual disk, right? How about you add a disk and you give this virtual machine direct access to a physical disk instead of a virtual disk, and then it talks to the hypervisor, and then it talks to the physical disk. Instead of that, why don't you, this machine can get a direct access to a physical disk as well. And we don't want to lose our access to this disk, a virtual disk which has an operating system as well. So pass-through disk is just a physical direct access to a physical disk, so you could put some application and get good performance, right? So what happens is that we need to make it enabled. So I cannot click anything on it, and it doesn't show anything anyway. So what happens is that we need to add a new disk here that is not formatted and is never used, not attached to any other virtual machine. So it's supposed to be a raw disk that needs to be attached. So in a production environment, if it's a physical server, obviously you will just add another physical disk and make it available only for this virtual machine for direct access, and format it, and then simply let this machine use that disk. So the physical disk, if you give to the virtual machine direct access, so there are IOPS, input output data per second, so the machine also gets very good performance. Suppose you want to install a database, so you could just OS on virtual disk, slower one, and the database application actually on a physical disk directly given to for this virtual machine only, the whole disk. So that's we need to make it available. So first thing is, for the pass-through disk, we need to right click here and then attach a new disk. Then we will just come back here and check if this area, this option is available to be clicked, right? So I'm going to cancel out from here. So the plan is that for the pass-through disk, in order to provide direct access to a raw disk, provide to a virtual machine direct access to a raw disk, we can use this option of pass-through disk, right? We need to add a new disk to the hypervisor and then make it available to the VM. That's what we need to do, right? So I'll just go to that hypervisor. So I'm in the hypervisor now. I'll actually go to that hypervisor and add a new disk. I'll right click and click the settings, and just like we added a new network card, so we need to, so we have just one disk here, right? And wow, it's showing NVMe. I don't have NVMe. Okay, anyway, so I'm just gonna click add here, and there's a hard disk here, so I'm just gonna simply add one more disk to the hypervisor, so the virtual machine on top of the hypervisor can have direct access to this full disk. So if I go ahead, SCSI, yeah, that's okay. Next, create a new virtual disk, yeah, that's okay. All default options. 60 GB, yeah, we're not gonna put any application. Obviously, in a production environment, you would just know that what kind of data you're expecting, how much data you're expecting to be placed on top of this disk. So according to that, you will put maybe 1 terabyte SSD or maybe 2 terabyte SSD. Here we can just keep it 60 or 200 or 500 because it's thin provisioned. It's not going to take any space on a physical disk, very less space, that is. So I'll just keep it like that, and next, no changes. Here also there's an external name of the disk. no changes here as well. I'll click finish, and a new 60 GB disk has been added to the hypervisor, and through the hypervisor it will be provided to the virtual machine, the guest operating system. So I'm just I'll press OK here, and the new disk should be available. The machine should be able to see that new disk now, where we were not seeing any values. Okay. So I'm going to go back to that machine that is turned off, and I'm going to check at that option. Go to settings, and then I'll click the hard drive. Now you can see that this option is clickable because there's a raw disk that is available, and it sees that raw disk was not formatted, nothing was done, so that's why it's you're able to see that disk. Suppose you formatted that disk, then you won't be able to see that here. But we can't just click here, right? Because if we click here, then it's going to be unchecked here, and this is the virtual disk with an operating system on top of it. So we don't want to lose that operating system here, right? So what we can do is that there's a SCSI controller here, and there's a hard drive written here. So I'm going to go to the SCSI controller, and then the hard drive is already selected here. I'm going to click add hard drive, right? And now you can see that the above the previous hard drive is still showing with the operating system of the virtual machine, while another hard drive has been added to this SCSI controller, and it's now using port 2 here for SCSI controller. And for this drive, we can have an empty virtual disk, but it's going to be slow. We are here for the physical hard drive. So the virtual machine can get the access to the physical disk or the pass-through disk. So I'll select that. So second drive is actually a raw disk, full disk, just dedicated for one virtual machine. That is called RDM, raw device mapping in VMware, and that's called pass-through disk here in Microsoft. So physical hard disk here, and that's it. So once we have given access to this virtual machine to the physical disk, then we click apply and OK. So the pass-through disk would be just that. If I click settings now again, and this is the hard drive that is virtual disk, this is the hard drive that is. So let's take a screenshot number 9. Oh, I didn't put the screenshot number from the last screenshot, but it's screenshot number 9, and that is pass-through disk. Screenshot number 9, pass-through disk. So take a screenshot here. Screenshot number 9, pass-through disk. I'll take that. I'll go for screenshot number 9, pass-through disk. This is a screenshot you're supposed to take. Okay, so screenshot number 9 is pass-through disk. And hopefully you've taken the screenshot with your name there, and I'll press O and K. So we talked about storage, and we talked about the networking as well, and we talked about all the virtual machine features there as well. And if we go to the hypervisor itself, so there's that Hyper-V settings, virtual switch manager. So in the Hyper-V settings, if we go, so it's the virtual disk path that you can change for any virtual machine in future that you create there. Virtual machine hard disk path is separate. Virtual machine files path is separate there. NUMA spanning just means that it will make the CPU and memory work together and faster for virtual machine. Live migrations is obviously the migration of a virtual machine from one hypervisor to another hypervisor. And storage migrations, this is also, if you storage just means here the storage or files of the virtual machine, the disk and the files of the virtual machine. So enhanced session mode policy, this is just that session in which you're connected to the virtual machine. It's not only secure, but it's also redirected to from where you're connecting. Suppose you're connecting from over the internet, so all the services are also redirected, like keyboard and mouse, and better user-friendly features are made available. And session is just overall user-friendly and faster. Replication configuration, so you want to make a replica, which means that one active virtual machine on one side and a passive virtual machine on the other side. So one hypervisor has an active machine, other hypervisor has the passive machine. So active will have all the end user connections, and passive will just keep copying anything that changes on active. So that can be done for in hypervisor. You just need two hypervisors, one virtual machine on one hypervisor, second virtual machine on another hypervisor. So that's replication configuration. The rest is keyboard, mouse, and enhanced session, reset checkbox settings, common settings there. And reset checkbox, whatever settings you've done here, it can just reset all back to the factory default settings. And so these are all the virtual, so this would be the hypervisor settings. So screenshot number 10 would be the hypervisor settings. You can take a screenshot here, screenshot number 10 of the screen, where it says hypervisor settings. Screenshot number 10, hypervisor settings. Screenshot number 10, hypervisor settings. Let's take a screenshot number 10. So this is a screenshot you're supposed to take. Screenshot 10, hypervisor settings. Hopefully you've taken that screenshot. So, well, you can now upload these all screenshots, and we can just you can go ahead and take this screenshot and screenshot number 10, hypervisor settings. Hopefully you have all taken this 10th screenshot. If you have, then go ahead and upload that. Upload where? Obviously I have to go there and quickly create that. I installed everything for the VM2. You didn't add ISO. Yeah, for the second, I didn't add it, the ISO on it. Well, I'll just quickly. Ooh, no, process. So it's week 4, guys. Just give me a sec here. I want to go for week 3. So let me just create the week 4. You need to upload there. Yusuf says, can you go back to the screenshot? This is a screenshot, Yusuf. You got it? Okay, hopefully you got it. Oh. Upload week 4, so that's where you need to upload. Okay guys, so go ahead and upload and see you on Thursday. I'll simply shut down the machine. Shut down guest.